Now, how would you even describe what you do? Are you a journalist, an interviewer, a talker guy? Like, how would you describe it? And when did you first realize that this is where you wanted to go with your career?
Yeah, well, I'm not a journalist. I would say at some level, I might be doing something somewhat close to journalism, but that's only because there are virtually no journalists left. There are very few fact-finding out there on the ground, neutral people fighting the power, doing actual journalism. We know we have activists masquerading as journalists. When I started doing the Rubin Report as an interview show, because as you know, I was on the Young Turks before that when I was a Bernie supporting lefty, and I did a show that was a little bit more like The View, kind of hot topics sort of stuff. When I moved, I know the exact date that we filmed it. It was September 9th, 2015. It aired the next day. I had moved to Aura TV, which was Larry King's digital network. And for the first show, I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I interviewed Sam Harris, the well-known atheist and
Muslim
and free. What do you say?
Muslim hater.
Well,
we're joking here. We're joking.
He doesn't believe in God, but he believes Trump is the devil. I'll say that much. But I like Sam. But what? Okay, the Trump stuff is sort of nuts. But in any event, I interviewed Sam because at that time it was a little bit after he had been on Real Time with Bill Maher, and that whole moment that woke up so many people, including me, where Ben Affleck, who I'm pretty sure was on steroids because he was about to be Batman, in effect called Sam Harris and Bill Maher gross and racist. And then all hell broke loose. I ended up devoting my book, by the way, to Ben Affleck because of that, because he led to my political awakening. But in any event, there was such an interesting moment there that then I saw all of these people suddenly calling Bill Maher racist. And it was like, what is happening to the left? Are liberals willing to talk about ideas and the difference? In this case, Sam was talking about the difference between, you should be able to criticize a religion, which is just a set of ideas, but you don't want to be bigoted towards people, which of course we all know is true. So I did basically an hour and a half interview with him, which was my first sort of long form sit down. And it felt real. It felt important. It felt relevant. And the second the show was done, even though they had signed me, Aura had signed me to do this kind of panel thing, I went back in there and I talked to the execs and I said, that's what I want to do. And that really was when, in many ways, you talk about that alignment, that in many ways when it kind of locked, at least at the career level for me, because I did something important. I did something real. I made a decision to say, oh, there's something there and I'm going to go to it. There's something in the distance and I want to get to that. And then from that, I started interviewing a lot of disgruntled lefties, I would say, the disaffected liberals. Maajid Nawaz, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Douglas Murray, who I would say is, from a British perspective, is a little more conservative, but seeing all of these people who believed in the things that I believe, but saw something very dangerous happening on the left. That's over 5.5 years ago now. And it's like, man, everyone's just repeating the stuff that we were saying back then, which I guess is nice at some level, although often feels frustrating to me.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that about things that we were saying years ago. I grew up online, as it were, in some very niche places online. And some of the things that we were talking about 10 and 15 years ago about the march of radical feminism and all these things, we were branded as crazy conspiracy theorists, tinfoil hat wearing people, just nut jobs. And even I denied what was really going on for a number of years. It really took, me getting canceled and me discovering at work, them writing, too many white people on the board of the HR committee meetings and things like this. And the Kavanaugh hearings was really what just finally just drilled it into my brain that, yes, the language of radical feminism is here. It's affecting us. It's affecting everything. It's even in the highest court in the land. And so it took me some time to really accept it myself. But once I did, obviously, it felt good on one hand. And yes, I do take some pride in being right, for like a decade before we got to this point. But there's no pride or no joy in seeing what has happened here. And one of the ways I've chosen to sort of deal with this is similar to you and truly in part inspired by you, Dave. So thank you, is to engage in these kind of conversations and to talk to people and to get things out there. And I'm learning this process as I go. Did you learn interview as you went? Did you study this? Do you have inspirations? Like, how did you figure out how to do this? Because you're doing a great job, right?
Well, thanks. I just go into my interviews with an open mind. I have never once in the hundreds or thousands of interviews that I've done, I've never tried to get somebody. I've always felt that if you ask the right question, which some people might say is a softball question, if you ask the right question and you let somebody talk long enough, you can figure out if they know really what they're saying or not. You can, if they don't, by the way, you can watch them actually tie the lasso around their neck and hang themselves. You can see it happening often. That doesn't mean that I'm a perfect interviewer by any stretch, but I would say, I mentioned Larry King before, and he just passed, and he became a friend and a mentor, and in some ways like a bonus grandfather for me. And, what I remember when I was 12, 13, watching Larry King on CNN. And I always thought, like, here's this nice man having interesting conversations. And it was funny because when the Rubin Report really started blowing up around 2015, 2016, and I started getting just like this unending hate from the supposedly tolerant people who are now calling me a Nazi and a bigot and everything else, but they're so tolerant, right? They kept saying, well, you're not asking hard questions. You're not asking the hard questions. Now, I always felt that actually you can ask hard questions and just be kind of nice about it. You really can do that. But what I also felt was, everywhere else, and we still see this now, politics is a freaking blood sport. And let's not forget, CNN replaced Larry King with Piers Morgan, who was an absolute horror as an interviewer because he always made it about him and chose people to fight with. So my feeling was, hey, if you like that, there's plenty of other places to get that. What I felt was, hey, if I can give someone an hour and really figure out what they think, then that's pretty cool. And obviously a lot of people like it. I'll give you one example of where that can become difficult. So I had Marianne Williamson on, remember Miss Crystal, who was also, going to be a presidential candidate or something like that. I had her on, and it was obvious that, like, from the get-go, like, I view the world very differently than her. Like, and this, by the way, this is, like a year ago or so, maybe a little bit more than that. So this is my political beliefs were very on the table at that point, which also can complicate your job as an interviewer, because if no one knows what you think, then you can always seem impartial. But if they know what you think, well, if someone says something against what you think and you don't immediately hit them over the head with it, well, then people will be like, oh, he's a pushover or something like that. And it's like, no, I'm just trying to be respectful. You know what I think already. But that aside, the fundamental difference that I have with someone like Marianne Williamson is that she's a collectivist and I'm an individualist. So she believes in collective white guilt over slavery, and we got into that. And at one point in the interview, she had said so many things that it was so obvious that I disagree with, that I felt, okay, instead of berating her or turning it into a debate show, what should I do here? And people can go back and watch. And about halfway through, I said, hey, I just want to stop for a second. And I just think we have to acknowledge the fundamental impasse that we have, which is that you believe in collectivism and I believe in individualism. And then, by the way, we continued the interview and it was just fine. And then ironically, when the cameras stopped, she suddenly said to me, oh, I'm kind of a libertarian too, and the left is totally bananas, which was sort of hilarious. Like, you don't say that. Like, that was the most interesting thing that you said, and you didn't say that on camera. But anyway, that's what can make being an interviewer challenging. But I never really studied it. I think it's a fundamental curiosity about humans. I can tell you're curious about humans. You're on a mission. I remember how long ago was it? We met in a hallway in DC at some event that I was doing. And you came up to me. I was walking down the hall, and you said, I'm Jack. I'm going through this situation right now. You kind of told me. And then it's actually been very cool over 5 years watching you grow and getting involved with Tim Pool and seeing those things. Like, I love seeing people go along the path and keep going. And by the way, everyone's interviewing people right now. And maybe in 3 years, I won't even be doing that anymore. I like doing the direct to camera stuff. And if everyone's going to do long form interviews, I'll find something else to do. But as long as it's valuable and enjoyable for me, I'll continue to do it.
Yes, lots of people are doing interviews, and for me, it's not, my brand isn't long form interviews. My brand is curiosity, which is what you just said. I am just my whole mission is just curiosity. I just want to learn more. I want to understand more. I want to have conversations across the aisle. I want to just get things out into the open and just learn. In fact, this is basically, I'm living basically my dream life, to be totally honest. Like I woke
That's
up
awesome,
today,
man.
yeah, I'm preparing to talk to Dave Rubin. We're going live. Thousands and thousands of people are going to see this, and I'm getting paid and living my life to talk to people that I find interesting, to read people's books, come have them on the show, and then be able to just interrogate them, in a good way for a couple of hours and really tease out what their work was. And I just released a podcast that I had recorded almost a year ago with Matt Stoller. Matt Stoller is a Democrat, a leftist populist. And we did a great interview, and we held off for a number of reasons releasing it. One of which was just Corona was dominating everything in our conversation. Very evergreen. It's a historic conversation. But this is the kind of work that I'm after, is like just trying to cross boundaries and find common ground. Because I was thinking, there was enough people for like the party of decriminalization, of legalized gay marriage, of guns. But now if you add to that anti-woke, anti-lockdown, and anti-corporate, like there's gotta be enough of us that meet all of those ticks that I think we could actually be a force, especially when you add in anti-corporate and anti-woke. I mean, we are living in a corporate techno-fascist society, whether or not people have admitted it fully just yet. So anti-woke, anti-corporate, anti-lockdown, pro-decriminalization, pro-civil rights. I mean, that seems like a good group of people. We should be reaching out to folks like that, just like this.
Yeah, Jack, you're pro-freedom. I mean, that's
Right.
it. You're pro-freedom. You want individual rights, meaning everyone that's in the United States legally should be treated exactly equally under the law. And by the way, equality is very different than equity, of course. They want an equitable society, which in effect is a communist or socialist society where we all end up in the same place. Let's not forget, 2 days before the election, Kamala Harris posted that cartoon. I'm sure you saw it on her Twitter feed, where they talked about equity, and it literally at the end said, so we can all end up in the same place. Well, it's just meaningless. Okay, so I'm vice president, she's vice president, we're all ending up in the same place. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But by the way, to bring this back to Marvel from very early on, Thanos wanted us all to end up in the same place in effect, right? Thanos saw a world of finite resources. I'm gonna have to kill an awful lot of people to get utopia. I don't believe in utopia. I believe the best that you can do is set up a place that's equal for people. And then depending on hard work, depending on luck that maybe you create, or some of it's God-given or whatever else it is, by creating good relationships, by having good ideas, you can flourish in that system. That's what capitalism is. By the way, it doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean there isn't crony capitalism and corrupt politicians and all those things, but it's the best system out of a bunch of bad systems to manage all sorts of people. That really is all it is. So what you just described there that you want, I think 80% of Americans want, and they don't even realize it. I mean, that's really what my book was about, that we don't have to agree on So for example, Jack, I don't know your position off the top of my head. I don't know your position on abortion. Whatever it might be, and I'm happy to discuss it if you want, I know that we want to live in the same society with each other, right? Like, we want to live in a place that, whether we agree on that or not, or whether we agree that the marginal tax rate should be the same, or whether the estate tax is moral or not, that we want to live in functionally the same society. I think most Americans want that. And in many ways, I would say, if you really want a dividing line of the day, as I said, it's not left, right anymore, you're either woke or you're conservative. Meaning, I don't mean conservative meaning a card-carrying member of the Republican Party and you have a picture of Mitch McConnell in the kitchen. What I mean is, you're woke. You've either accepted the ideas of collectivism, you've accepted the ideas of state authoritarian power, and that we are all fundamentally racist, and it is our job to rejigger a society in a way that's going to fix that. Or you believe that freedom is kind of messy, but it's the best thing we got, and let's run with that. And I would say that makes you a modern conservative. So I don't have a problem if someone says even though I wrote a book defending liberalism, it's over my shoulder, I don't have a problem if someone says I'm a conservative through that lens.
Don't burn this book by Dave Rubin. Go out and get it right now.